Hello and welcome to 15 Opportunities to Self-Worth. How to empower yourself with transformative tools. I am Soma and I'm so excited to present Emilie Delworth. She is an incredible author, a wonderful mother, and I just have to say, she inspires me every time that I look at her social media. So I'm really looking forward to this talk. We'll go ahead and bring Emilie on. Thank you so much, Emilie, for being here. And as I have to say, I got a little teary-eyed just looking through one of your talks, and you're just so deep when it comes to really addressing the guilt and the shame and the frustration that a parent feels when they're taking care of the very thing that they love more than anything else in the world. So let's just jump right into, thank you for being here. And why don't you give me a background on who you are, what you do, and what makes you so passionate about being a parent?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I am Emilie, as you said, and I'm also known as the Peaceful Mother. And so, yeah, I have a long background in child development, early childhood education. Spent most of my, young adult into my 30s working as a nanny and preschool teacher, and was always really passionate about that. And also have a background in trauma, so had a very traumatic upbringing, and I think that's part of what led me to really wanting to work with children. I used to always say that I wanted, that if I could just, even if I was the only person in that child's life that was like consistently showing up with like love and nurturing for them, like I wanted to be that for them. And so I was really passionate about that. And then I became a mom, something I always wanted. And I was completely blindsided by basically being frequently dysregulated, and I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew that I was having angry outbursts. I was absolutely enraged. And I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I was psychologically harming my infant. I was affecting my relationship with my partner, and I knew I needed to get it under control. And so that led me to the world of somatic work and neurosomatics, and it completely transformed my life. I now coach other mothers in learning how to regulate their nervous systems, regulate their emotions, so that they can really show up as peaceful, intentional mothers, and not have these kind of angry outbursts or moodiness or however their dysregulation manifests, hijack their experience of motherhood and their child's experience of childhood.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. So I want to ask a few follow-up questions to that. You used words like dysregulated and somatic. And so let's go in for our viewers. But before we go any further, this isn't just for mothers of young children. This isn't just for mothers. We get a lot of adults, and I can say, my kids are 34, 30, and 17. And my 34-year-old can still dysregulate me, or I can go back and feel trauma for how dysregulated I was as I was raising that child. So can you speak, that was kind of a mouthful there, but can you speak to what does self-regulation mean? What does somatic mean? And you had a quote that said, an escalated adult cannot de-escalate an escalated child. And that's true for a teenager, that's true for your partner. So that's a big, long-winded question. Why don't you just attack it wherever it seems to feel right?
Okay, yeah. So regulation, self-regulation, it's really about, I talk about nervous system regulation, which is really about helping, our nervous system is the driver of so much of our lives. And when we are in a, kind of met with a stressful situation, whether it's, someone cut us off in traffic, or whether our mommy just yelled at us, or whether our partner, we're in conflict with our partner, whatever it might be, our toddler's throwing a tantrum, we, have this fight or flight response, and our nervous system is responsible for that. So really learning how to regulate that so that we kind of are able to take charge I won't get too far into all the different parts of the brain, but essentially what happens when we're met with those stressors is the amygdala kind of hijacks the brain and goes into survival mode. And so that's why we can have these angry reactions that before we even have a chance to process what happened, what just went on, we're like, whether it's our teenager just screamed at us and slammed the door or, whatever. And before we've even logically been able to process what happened, we're already responding. And so when we learn how to really regulate our nervous system, we're more capable of showing up with our frontal lobes and our more conscious mind more often. And when we do experience that amygdala hijacking, that fight or flight response, we learn, we can learn how to then recognize that and use somatics, which I will get into in a second, to then regulate the nervous system. And when we have a regulated nervous system, we can regulate our emotions. So somatic refers to the body. So it's really about kind of, I think a lot of people have heard of emotional intelligence now, but somatic intelligence is really about being connected with the body. That's something that so few of us, are able to do now. I think a lot of us lose that connection in childhood because our well-meaning parents, kind of unintentionally taught us to disconnect from our bodies. And especially if we experience trauma, we're going to disconnect. And so it's really about connecting with the body, recognizing what's going on for us in our, sensations and how that connects with our experience of emotions. Emotions are very much a body experience more than anything. And so, and then using different movement and breath and things like that to regulate our nervous system and regulate our emotions.
Can you give me an example of what a somatic or nervous system treatment to oneself? Like if I find that I'm about to explode or that hot feeling goes off in your body and all you want to do is spew something in what you feel is direct retaliation to what somebody just did, what would be a quick exercise, something that somebody could do immediately?
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said, you mentioned like feeling the heat and stuff. And that's something that so few people are able to recognize when they are dysregulated and when they're having these emotional outbursts because of that disconnection from the body. So the first step is always helping people connect to the body. And like you said, this isn't just for moms or moms with young children. This is all human beings, regardless of whether they're a parent or not. And so really learning how to connect with the body so that you can recognize that, when you get angry, there is heat or there's tension or, whatever. And that can kind of cue us into, what, I'm about to lose my marbles on this person. And so I need to, figure this out. So anyway, one of the, there's a couple of things that we can do. It always kind of depends on whether we're like really escalated or whether we're kind of more in a hypoarousal where we're kind of like more like lethargic and slow and depressed and things like that. But in general, I like to really help people just make contact with the body at first. So it can be as simple as just putting our hands on our chest like this. I love doing the self-hug. This is a great one for really connecting with the body. And so often when we're upset with people, and having those big reactions, there's always an underlying feeling. So it's like, I feel disrespected. I feel out of control. I feel unsafe, things like that. And so I love the self-hug. You can squeeze as hard as you need, but it helps you connect. It gives you contact with the body and it makes you're being held. You are holding yourself, you're showing up as the parent that you needed as a kid and maybe didn't have and that you need right now. So that's one thing, is really just making contact with the body in that way and giving yourself that nurturing. And then I can go into other techniques if you want, or we can get to that later.
Let's do one more technique. If I'm super angry, I'm hot, I'm aware, I don't feel like hugging myself. All I feel like doing is punching something or screaming at something. What would you advise me to do?
My go-to for those situations is shaking.
Oh, that's a great one. In Sanskrit, they
Yeah.
call it virata. Yes, and
Yes.
you can
And so,
shake and
yeah, and you can get your whole body into it and you just shake it out. I mean, and this is what animals do. This is what,
yeah,
you watch the prey
yep.
animal escape the predator on National Geographics or whatever it is, and they've just escaped. They go shake it out. You want to shake the stress out.
That's a cliche statement. Go shake it off. That's a real
Yeah.
statement. I didn't even
It's,
realize that's really where it came from. And
yeah.
that's funny. I didn't, shake it off, just literally.
You literally want to shake it out. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you're like driving, you can't do this. And if you're in the middle of a meeting or something, you can't always do this. Sometimes you got to step away, in order to do it. Which is why it's handy to have a whole toolbox full of different techniques.
So one other follow-up question to that, how can one communicate with their nervous system? How would you explain? How am I communicating with my nervous system? What does that even mean?
Right, right. So in the world of neurosomatics, there's what we call kind of testing the nervous system. So you kind of establish a baseline before you would do a technique. And really the key to all of this is that you develop a practice regularly. So, you don't wait until you're in the heat of the moment. You want to just every day, like for at least a few minutes a day or most days, really be working with your nervous system. And so one of the ways that we can test the nervous system, a super simple way, is we just turn our head and you look to the right and you just take a mental note of where you are looking, at the point in front of you. And then you turn your head the other way. And again, you take a mental note of where you're looking right in front of you. You can also recognize, like, is there any kind of like tension? Did that feel tight? Or, what's going on sensationally for you? So you do that before you do a drill or a technique. And so we would do that. And then we'll like we said, we'll shake it out or something like that. Or maybe, we would do like something super simple as a straw breath. So you just take a breath in, and then when you breathe out, you're going to act like you're breathing through a straw, and you're going to breathe out until you empty your lungs. And so it's
You're literally blowing out steam.
yes. And you're emptying those lungs. And this is a really great, like, down regulating. So again, when you're angry or you're scared or something that's got you escalated, this is a very down regulating drill. And so then you've done your somatic technique, your neurosomatic technique, and then you test the nervous system. We already established our baseline. So now we turn our head again and we see, can we rotate our head further, the same amount or not as far? And so we do that on both sides. And so for me, I already increased my range of motion just from that. And so when you're able to go rotate further, that's an indicator that your nervous system is responding well. It says, yay, I am more regulated.
So it's a physical response immediately that you can actually measure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love it because as important as it is to, learn how to connect with the body and really recognize what's going on for us, that's really difficult, and it can take time for a lot of people. Some of my clients come to me and they are just so disconnected, and they've been disconnected for the last 30, 40, whatever years. And so I love that we have this way of actually communicating directly so that we don't have to take months and months and months of really practicing how to connect with the body and overcoming these feelings of being unsafe in the body and stuff. We can just communicate right then and there. And so yeah, if you rotate further, that's a yay. Your nervous system is responding well. If it's about the same as before, that's a neutral response. It just means maybe you need a different technique. It means maybe you need more of that technique. Maybe you want to stack your different drills. And so you might do like straw breathing with like tongue rotations in your mouth or some other type of drill. And then if you're not rotating as far the second time when you're testing, that's an indicator that your nervous system is not responding well to that. And so you would want to follow it up with like a high payoff drill is something that you typically respond well to. I have never had an experience personally where I don't respond well to straw breathing. So for me, that's a high payoff drill. For other people, again, you want to kind of build this toolbox of different techniques so that, you know, you can find out what typically works for you and what doesn't.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So I'm going to ask you, what do you do now that you have somebody who's, say, older, a teen or a 20-something or a partner? When you feel that same intensity, how do you utilize these skills for, I mean, a teenager yells at you, calls you a name, slams the door. What would be your process? Do you follow them? Do you ask them to deregulate? Do you give them time? How would you respond?
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this is something that it can take time and it can take a lot of practice for people to get to a point where they can really respond in an optimal way in these situations. But ultimately what you want to do is you want to kind of take this step back. So you want to like find the pause, people will talk about find that pause. And you want to turn your focus on yourself. You can deal with the disrespect or the problem behavior or, your dysregulated child or whatever it is, your dysregulated partner, you can deal with them in a moment. But like we said, an escalated person cannot de-escalate an escalated person. And so you have to focus in on yourself. And so then it's like checking in with your body. It's like, okay, what am I feeling? What emotion am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Do I know why I'm feeling this? I'm not sure. Maybe I do. What am I feeling in my body? And that's where, this is also where connecting with the body is so handy, because if I know that like, okay, I'm feeling so frustrated right now, and I'm feeling all this tension like in my throat or something, if I can kind of identify where I'm like, I can recognize that like, whoa, I'm like clenching my fist. That's an indicator of like what it is that we need, how we need to regulate ourselves. What is it that our body needs to release that energy? So if I'm feeling tension in the throat and I feel like screaming or yelling, then it's a good indicator that I might need to do mouth work or sound release or do a jaw massage, something relating to that part of the body. If I'm feeling tension, if I'm clenching my fists, it might be an indicator that I need to shake it out or I need to do some tense and relax. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah.
That's something we do in yoga, push our hands against each other and squeeze.
Yeah.
Great.
And I do that with my daughter too. I mean, my young daughter, sometimes when she's so mad and she wants to rip things off the wall and she wants to hit and throw things, and I get it. Like that's her body's innate way of like getting that emotional energy out, but not safe, not appropriate. So I invite her to push on my hand, like get that tension out, get that energy out. So
I have one more kind of intense question for those parents who are feeling like they've messed up their kid. They didn't know any of this stuff. They maybe didn't have the greatest role model as a parent. They completely copycatted that. And it wasn't until their child grew out, or maybe even had a grandchild. And all of a sudden now their self-worth is rock bottom. They feel terrible. I have a model. Anybody can parent, it's the adulting part that's hard. Because then you get to see the fruits of what happened. And so I do enjoy working with parents who feel like that they messed up. So what can we say to those parents who are feeling guilt and shame right now?
Yeah. This is where I think a lot of the very nurturing somatic work comes in handy. Things like self-hug, butterfly hug, soothing touch, really just giving ourselves the nurturing that we need and that we needed as children, but maybe weren't getting, even if we had well-meaning parents. This is also where the whole like inner child healing and reparenting really comes in. So recognizing that, all of that guilt and that shame that you are experiencing is coming from these aspects of your psyche, these parts of yourself that you used to be that are still living within you. And so oftentimes, when we are triggered, it's the inner child that's triggered. She's being taken back to some experience in childhood, some painful experience in childhood. And if we don't know how to be the healthy parent because we didn't have that modeled for us, or we've just been through so much traumatic stuff that we've lost our ability to show up as a healthy parent for ourselves, then there's this inner adolescent, the teenager part of us that shows up. Or maybe there's this like really critical mother within us, the critical parent within us that's like, you can't do anything right, and so there's these aspects of ourselves that start to beat ourselves up. And so when we can kind of recognize these different parts of ourselves and give ourselves the nurturing, both somatically, but also just emotionally and psychologically, and recognizing like, hey, I see you in there. And I know that you're hurting. And I've got you. It's okay. I've got you now, and you can even, I think it's so important to nurture the inner teenager, even when she's lashing out, and hurting other people and hurting ourselves, I see you. I see that you're trying to help. Thank you for trying to protect the inner child. We're all grown.
You're giving me goosebumps.
Yes.
I want to go back to what I said at the very, very beginning. I really enjoy your social media posts. They do invoke an emotional response in me, which still tells me, even with all the work that I'm doing, I still have a lot of my own work to do. You really have some wonderful tools. And so you have a book. Tell me about your book. And then you have like little corners set up in your house for different people, or for yourself, or for your teen, or for a young child. How can people use your resources, from your social media to your book and anything else that you offer service-wise?
Yeah. So I have a book. It's called The Angry Mom's Guide to Self-Regulation. It's obviously written for mothers in mind, because that's who I work with. But I've definitely had people who are, I've had fathers read it and tell me that they really benefited from it. I've had people who are not parents read it and really benefit from it. My editor is not a mother, and she was like, she's like, this is really helpful for dog moms as well. So and it's basically just this step-by-step guide of walking people through the process of like kind of raising their awareness around kind of what their triggers are and where they might be stemming from, and then walking them through this process of like building a toolbox full of somatic and neurosomatic techniques, so that they can regulate their nervous systems and regulate their emotions better. And then, yes, I have some various different digital downloads that are available on my website, which is the-peaceful-mother.com. And so we've got self-regulation or emotional regulation posters for children. We've got emotional regulation posters for teens and adults. And these, again, it's just kind of this visual guide to walk you through this process of either for yourself or for your child, kind of tapping in. Okay, what am I feeling emotionally? What am I feeling in my body? What sensations am I feeling? Okay, what do I need to regulate myself? And what is my underlying need? Because anytime there's any kind of emotional outburst, any kind of reactivity, there is an unmet need beneath it. So whether it's our toddler, whether it's our teenager, whether it's ourself, there's an unmet need that we need addressed. And so behavior is communicating an unmet need, regardless of our age. So the posters really help us kind of turn that focus into these different aspects of helping us overcome these challenging situations. And then, I always, I recommend creating different emotional processing spaces. So sometimes they're called calm down corners or time in spaces. And it's really just kind of this like cozy, safe space that we can either take our children or we can go to for ourselves, where we can have those posters up and kind of, utilize those, but also have different tools around to help give ourselves or our child the nurturing that they need or get that emotional energy out. There's a lot of wonderful tools for getting emotional energy out, for kids, having them hammer a toy, or for ourselves, even, having something to bite on, like all of these different things can be really helpful to get that emotional energy out. So, and then, and I offer coaching as well. And I
Tell me a little bit about your coaching. What would that look like?
Yeah, so I'm about to phase out of one-on-one coaching. So anybody who's currently a client will get grandfathered in, and they will be able to, have one-on-one coaching as long as they need to. And so I do currently, I am doing, I do kind of peaceful parenting coaching, which we really focus mostly on the mom, the woman, or the grandma. I do have grandmothers come to me as well. And so we're really focusing on her inner world more so than like how to get your kid to stop acting like a kid. It's more about educating her in like why your kid is acting like a kid and how you can better respond. I also do trauma and addiction recovery coaching, but I'm about to launch my first online coaching program called The Regulated Mother. And it's kind of like taking my book and expanding on it. And again, just walking mothers through this process and grandmothers through this process of learning how to regulate their nervous systems and overcome dysregulation so that they can show up as the mothers that they really aspire to be, that's in alignment with whatever it is that they value, and not letting all these fight or flight responses get in the way.
What I'm hearing from you is that it's really about, no matter what's happening in the outside world, as soon as we disengage from that chaos, just the look of what am I doing? How am I feeling? That alone becomes a distraction to the emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wonderful. And gone are the days of sending somebody into a corner that's quiet by itself and saying, you're in thinking time right now. I mean, that's not what we really need. We don't need to obsess over what we're feeling badly about. Right. We need to shift what it is that we're feeling, or become more aware of where it is in our body. What a wonderful, novel, new idea for parenting.
Yes.
Emily.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
For children, they actually, their brain is not capable of like that type of reflection, and it actually just encourages shame. So for a lot of us, we're like, we had great childhoods. My parents were great. Like, why do I have all this shame? And why do I have all this dysregulation? And oftentimes it's these well-meaning, like, well, but kids need discipline. Kids need to be punished. They need to be, and it's like, well, actually, no, that was instilling shame, and they weren't capable of actually learning what you wanted them to learn in that situation.
Redirection.
Yes, like we do need to address the fact that our, child behaved in some inappropriate way after we are all regulated. And yes, we do want to address the fact that maybe our partner just said something really disrespectful to us after we are all regulated.
That's the takeaway. Get regulated first, because you can't help anybody. So you'll put on your own oxygen mask first.
Yeah.
So before we finish up here, tell us, for our VIP people, what is your special offering? And maybe we'll encourage those who are on the fence if they want the VIP package. What do our VIP people get from you?
Yeah. So I'm offering the free poster series. So you can choose either or both the emotional regulation posters for children and or the emotional regulation posters for teens and adults. And so I forget off the top of my head what the discount code is, but it will be
we'll have it, all the information in the video for sure.
So
wonderful. And do you use them? I mean, obviously you created these posters for yourself. Do you still, as an adult, as an author, as a speaker, as a veteran mom now, do you still use this?
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing is this is a journey. Like, there's no, like, the finish line is like when we are on our dying day, this is always a process of like, healing ourselves more and growing ourselves more, finding increased regulation. I still have days where I get reactive and, oh my God, do I need those posters? And I have a 4-year-old, of course she needs those posters. So absolutely, we definitely utilize those posters quite a bit. My partner does. Yeah, very useful.
Wonderful. One more time, how can people get in touch with you? Again, we're going to have all of this information, but for those who aren't reading emails, your social media page on Instagram is
it's at the.peaceful.mother. That's Instagram and Facebook. And
Beautiful.
then, yes, my website is the-peaceful-mother.com.
Beautiful. And again, we will have all this information in the follow-up emails. What is the most important thing for people to remember when doing this type of work?
Again, it is that we have to cultivate a regular practice. We cannot expect to find the pause if we are never practicing and we're met with like the heat of the moment, and like it's probably not going to happen. You're probably going to default into whatever reactivity you are prone to. And so we've got to develop a regular practice. It doesn't have to be a long time. I mean, I literally, like, some days it's like 2 minutes. Some days my daughter's doing it with me and we're just doing some breath work and we're shaking it out. And I'm just working with my nervous system each day. That is the key. You got to practice. Nobody gets good at anything without practice.
Wow, so inspiring. Everybody, please go check out her Instagram. It will touch you. It will move you. You will relate to it, whether you're a parent, whether you're not a parent. We've all been parented. If it wasn't our parents, it was our grandparents, it was some other caregiver. And we've all been dysregulated by some dysregulated adult. Could have been a teacher, could have been a coworker. It's happened. And we've all reacted and thought, oh, crap, I could have done that better. So my takeaway is we don't need to fix anybody else. We need to connect with ourselves. We need to regulate ourselves. We need to get into the body, and then we can handle whatever situation, whether it's a toddler or a baby. And you do have a really interesting story. I'm not going to get into that, but check out her Facebook. I mean, she talked about challenges in her pregnancy. She talked about challenges in delivery. She talks about challenges in breastfeeding. She talks about challenges weaning. This woman has really gone through a lot, everybody. Take full advantage of her tool bag, and she will inspire you, I'm sure, as much as she inspires me. I am so honored that you took the time with us all, Emilie. You have such an important message. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Thank you all, everybody.